In this video essay, I will be exploring the importance of pace in editing and how the best rhythm is chosen to impact the audience. Part 1. Rhythm. Walter Murch refers to pace as rhythm in his book In the Blink of an Eye. It is the rate at which events flow within a narrative. However, it is defined subjectively depending on who you ask. It is also highly dependent on the genre you are working with, such as Evan Schiff, the editor of John Wick Chapter 2. In an interview with Steve Holfish, he discussed the difference with editing dialogue compared to action, where it is a lot more open-ended. Whilst for action scenes, they are usually very tightly choreographed. However, he follows the same approach for both, by watching them to see what I have and then feel my way from there. Lee Smith, the editor of Interstellar, talks about trying to pack it down, to change the pacing, but soon discovering that doing so lost everything, the meaning of the lines, needing to let it breathe, as the movie itself was telling you that it wasn't going to do this. Smith believes that the goal of editing and pace is to have it be long enough to make them want more, and not long enough for anyone to say it's boring or dull. In their book, Film Art, Bordwell and Thompson describe pace as what musicians call tempo. Stanley Kubrick even described film this way, as being more like music than like fiction. Every aspect makes way for progression of moods and feelings. This is in line with Murch's Rule of Six, where he places emotion as the highest priority. How do you want the audience to feel? In certain circumstances, everything below emotion can be sacrificed, but only if it benefits the emotional impact. If the audience doesn't connect to what is happening on screen, then the entire film falls apart around them. However, it is unrealistic to think that you can always include all 6 criteria in the edit, throwing them aside from the bottom up. For example, the least important, 3-dimensional continuity, is thrown away in this small scene from Jaws, edited by Verna Fields.
$10,000, $200 a day, whether I catch him or not.
You got it. Get the mirror off my back so I don't have any more of this zoning crap.
We don't need to see the sheriff travel from the hospital to the harbour. The audience can see what has happened by the shot of him walking away. This removes the wasted time, including it would create, and forms a better rhythmic structure as the film continues to flow from one scene to another. This is also important as the scene occurs after the narrative's turning point, where the latest shark attack finally gets the mayor to hire the shark hunter, Quint, and the rest of the film from here is the build-up to the final confrontation with the shark. If you waste the audience's time, you lose their investment, especially at this pinnacle point in the story. If the emotion is right and the story is advanced in the right rhythm, the audience will tend to be unaware of or unconcerned about editorial problems. Or in this case, they won't care that they have to fill in the blanks because in the grand scheme of things it isn't worth it when they are so invested in the other criteria. Part 2. Audience and impact. The audience plays a major part in the process of choosing the correct rhythm, as you are creating it for them to experience. Rhythm is direct address to the body, to emotion. It is vitally important to feel what they will. The editor is the film's first audience after all. Every edit you do must first affect yourself in order to become the cycles of tension and release and the synchronizing force that move the spectator that it needs to be. In an interview with Ian Smith for BAFTA, Dan Crinion discusses editing the more comedic aspects of the violent spy thriller Killing Eve. One scene in particular stood out to him.
Wow, you look amazing. Can I take a picture of you for my Instagram?
No. No, of course not. Don't be pathetic. Get a real life.
Evil grows in the dark.
In the cutting room, they had to ask themselves if it progressed the story, and if it didn't, could it just be cut? But he said that when shown to people, everyone laughed, and found that the short scene got to the heart of the character. It helps to flesh out not only her, but the world building of the show as a whole. The editor of the recently released Dune 2021, Joe Walker ACE, describes the film as having an interesting rhythm because it starts quite gently actually, and builds up your interest in the characters. Then, I think it's accelerative and becomes very dynamic. These are conscious choices he made to suit and create the emotional ties needed to bring the audience into the world of the film. For example, he mentions that, as an editor, you could easily find low-hanging fruit to cut if you wanted to shorten the film, but you would have lost a lot. Walker specifically refers to this scene.
I didn't know date palms could even be found out here.
Oh, these aren't indigenous. They can't survive without me. Each one of these drinks every day the equivalent of 5 men. 20 palm trees. 100 lives.
It could easily be cut and the narrative would be kept intact, but you'd lose the moment of seeing those same trees on fire once the settlement is attacked. They are burning, so all of that hope and all of those dreams are kicked to the wayside. There's a tragedy to that. You could cut that out, but you'd lose the depth, the storytelling, and the world building. Cutting either of those would reduce what the audience takes away. Murch stated, "What they finally remember is not the editing, not the camera work, not the performances, not even the story. It's how they felt." Test screenings are often used to gauge how something is being received before release. Joe Walker, in a conversation with Roger Deakins on his podcast, discussed this. "Some people hate them and are very frightened of them, but I love them. There's nothing like sitting in an audience with other people and feeling how the film is going down. The edit is about managing that sync between if you are ahead of the audience or if you are behind." Test screenings reveal that. However, they aren't all created equally, and sometimes they aren't as helpful as you would want them to be. James Deakins said, "You bring these people in and you give them the treat about seeing this movie, and then you give them the questions and they feel like they should answer. Sometimes you get things that wouldn't have come up if you didn't set it up that way." Talking about test screenings for The Batman to Collider, Matt Reeves said that he was terrified because "we're showing this before I'm ready. In terms of a Batman movie, it's a very complex detective story narrative. Are they going to be able to follow anything?" But because of these tests, he found that they loved that part of it. It was one of the things that tested best. The audience would be excited about this version of the movie, and that only continued to get better as we continued to test. Reeves tried to mitigate the issues Deakins took as much as possible by keeping the film a secret beforehand. They would come to a screening and then suddenly they realized they were seeing a Batman movie. The experience of using test screenings varies from filmmaker to filmmaker, but for Reeves, here was just utter silence, and you were like, okay, people love Batman, and they're into this, and that was exciting. That to me was the best part of the testing. Part 3. Application of research. Following my research, I wanted to apply what I had found to my own edit. In this case, with a short scene from the film Authentic Tortilla, provided by Editstock. I read the line script and chose the scene that stood out to me, where our main character's bike is stolen, and the precious tortillas he had made with his grandma fall to the ground. One where he gets so close to his goal, just to have it ripped away from him.
Hey! Go. Shake. Good. Now turn back. Look up.
I felt like a slow build-up would help to intensify the feeling of dread. We follow him through the corridor until the door closes in front of us, separating us from him, unable to help whatever is happening. We're as confused as he is initially. Building on this sense of being unable to help, the camera runs after him, shaking and tumbling as we are in the struggle too. The rhythm gains pace here. The shot rapidly changes to the bike being lifted from its chain, our main character hopelessly gathering the tortillas from the floor as the thief rides past. Rushing to his feet, he starts to throw the bag at him. I felt it was important for us as an audience to feel as if we were in the situation too, an overseer who can't intervene. The rhythm becomes desperate here. The tortillas may be a lost cause, but he can't lose the bike too. I wanted the bag to suddenly hit the thief, playing into the sense of how quickly the situation is changing. 1 second he's at the top of the world, and the next he's hitting rock bottom. A moment of celebration. This is one win at least. The words of Dan Crinion stayed with me. The cheer got to the heart of the character. As the thief gets to his feet and runs into the road, there's hesitation. Will this small victory be taken too? The rhythm slows down towards the end of the scene as he gets a moment to rest and take in what has happened. I wanted to stay on the first shot for as long as I could to emphasize this. That feeling of being unable to help is retained through the entire sequence. The final shot the audience is left with is of tortillas strewn across the dirty pavement as he watches on. What was the point in any of this? To test if the scene was making an impact on the audience, I needed to show it to people, which I did. I collected a few questions that would typically be asked at real test screenings and asked them. How did you like it? It was short, but I liked it. Did you understand the conflict? I didn't immediately. What did you think of its pacing? It was too quick during the initial confrontation. I couldn't tell what was happening. How did it affect you? It felt like I was with him in the action. The results do help as a guide of where I'd go next with the sequence, mainly making the situation clearer, but I'm glad that the intended effect of making it feel like the audience is going through it with him is maintained. I could see a benefit in these screenings, but I also understand where they can falter.